Welcome everyone, and we will now talk a little bit about how do we share this common ground? How do we get a common language? How do we get interoperable modular architectures up and running? Not as a technical discussion, but how do we create guidance, operational guidance? So I have with me here today three fantastic speakers who are doing it. Anders Mynster from Denmark, Lotta Nordström from Sweden, and Pieter Lenaerts from Flanders, well, Belgium, but representing that part of Belgium. We will hear very briefly, because we only have half an hour for this session. So what do you then do if you want to create guidance which is helpful both for, of course, the municipalities, regions, public administrations who have to buy these things, who have to maybe operate, who have to regulate this, but also to the companies, big and small, who want to supply in this space. And if I can just very quickly show here what I think is happening at the moment, at least what I'm seeing, is that we have a lot of efforts that are actually quite similar in many ways. So we have guides, as I said, that are being made in different national settings. Let me just see if I can operate this. Okay, and you should be able to see my screen in a second. So we have the national guides from Denmark, Sweden, Netherlands. Last year here at the conference, we had the Danish open urban platform node from the Dutch standards organization, NEN. We have seen what Pieter and the colleagues have been doing with VLOCA, with the Flemish open architecture. We have seen marvelous work being presented in Japan, and TAC from OASC Japan presented last year in the closing the status there, but now it's released. There is really a very, very good guide and white paper and technical documentation on how to infrastructure a smart society based on smart cities and communities. We're also seeing how this is coming together in the global regions. Of course, the session that was just before on living in EU, where there's a technical part, but there's really operational guidance on how to make this stuff work. On the UN level, there is the United for Smart and Sustainable Cities and Communities and the new architecture there. And then, of course, there's a lot of commercial offerings. If you use our platform, our system, our ecosystem, then here's how you do it. So let's have three examples of how this is being done in Denmark, in Sweden, and in Flanders. So Anders, please, over to you. Could you just quickly also say a few words about who you are and how you're situated with the work?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Martin. So I'm Anders Mynster from Force Technology, who is an RTO in Denmark. And I'm also the head of the Nordic IoT Center, where we are facilitating partnerships and ecosystem development within IoT. We have been very focused on developing IoT from the supply side. So how can we create all of the actors to get together and build sustainable IoT solutions and profitable IoT solutions across the industry? We are very widely focused, so we're not only focusing on smart cities, we're also focused on industrial IoT, IoT for farming, IoT for environmental monitoring, etc. So it's very widely focused. And then we take the outset of all of the suppliers that basically supply all of these systems. And what is interesting is in the old days when we talked about open urban platforms, we had an idea that everything was one collected set of data, and then we would create a massive amount of value just by having the data available. And now we start to figure out, well, it's more about the people and all of the actors and how do they collaborate and how do we create platforms for them to be able to collaborate. So what we've done in the Nordic IoT Center is that we've collected all of these suppliers within IoT and sort of facilitated collaboration in the ecosystem. And for that, I could talk for a long time about this, but it's basically all of the roles who are in the IoT ecosystem and how they need to interact and collaborate to create operational IoT enabled solutions that can be brought into society. So most of our modus operandum is basically to facilitate this kind of collaboration. And what is central about this is the client advisor role that you can see here in the dashed line, and the IoT contractors, who are basically those who are integrating all of the different actors and roles within the ecosystem to collaborate to create these solutions. And what is interesting is that when we see this from a supply side, then the recommendation, for instance, in the Dutch recommendations, the NN guide, then it's also about what kind of role do you take as municipality when you need these types of IoT solutions. Do they need to have a minimum role? Do they need to have a facilitating role, etc.? And it's exactly the same from the supply side. How do we, with the IoT developing companies, how do they see their own role? Sometimes they can have a leading role and implementing role, and sometimes they need the client advisors and the contractors supporting them in the IoT development. And basically, just to say, in the Nordic IoT Center, we've collected, I think we're up to 75 different use cases of IoT. Some of them are in industry, some of them are in the smart city domain. But based on this, we entered into the collaboration with the Danish Standards Association, Aarhus University with Martin Brynskov, and a lot of other actors within the Danish society. And how could we then create recommendations within Denmark on how to build sustainable societies? And if you take that from a high level perspective, then we have our guide, which is citizen centric. We have our recommendations, and it's basically to map the demand side. So how do we create demands for these smart city solutions? And on the other side, on the supply side, how do we make sure that they are most beneficial within what the demand side is requesting? And then we have the means on the left. So it is data, it is sensors, Internet of Things, drones, robots, broadband, etc. And then, of course, we have the goals. What's the quality of life, the climate, the environment, the economy, safety, privacy, and health? And how do we then try to condense all of that into some clear recommendations that is easily communicated to the other actors in the society, such that we can facilitate this collaboration? So without further ado, we managed to condense that into our guide to sustainable and digital transformation into 7 recommendations that sort of address all of the good common practices, both from the supply side, but also from the demand side, in what should we focus on when we build the smart city solutions. And just to focus or dwell a bit on these recommendations. So focusing of data, that's of course evident that we need to have solutions that are based on what is the value of the data that we are creating, but also the lifetime support. How do we make sure that we do management of data in the long term? Then building with interfaces, APIs. So I don't think it's a stranger to many here that having the interchangeable and sharing of data across multiple solutions is essential. But it's important for us also to focus on how do we share the data. So in the old days, we focused on sensor networks, where all of the data has to be interoperable through the same wireless communication platforms. But now we're tending towards an API-based interoperability. Then, as the third recommendation, is to ensure the minimum of interoperability within these APIs. So it is not just to have the data available, but also a meta description about the data. So Where is it recorded? What are the measurement values? How is it reported? What are the schemas that are going to be used or have been used? Where do I find the schemas? Are there any traceability of the data? And under which conditions can you reuse these data in other business applications or societal applications or research applications for that matter? Then the fourth recommendation is to be open towards technology choices. So it's very much important that we see that there are tenders in some municipalities that are very focused on one or the other technology because there's an existing infrastructure that they want to use. But in some cases, we see that the infrastructure is also being deployed in multiple parallel tracks. So in that sense, you can have a better and cheaper solution based on other infrastructure. So it's important that we formulate these projects that we are launching with an openness towards different technologies and different use of infrastructures. Then on the fifth is the prioritization of ecosystem and partnerships. Very much into the point that I talked about before, that the essential part is not necessarily that we have the data available, it's also that we facilitate the creation of partnerships and the ecosystem that are able to collaborate about using the data for new purposes. And a lot of the time, that is the essential part of the partnerships and the open urban platforms. Then the sixth recommendation, to be conscious about the maturity and the complexity. The maturity is very much related to the organization. So what is the organizational maturity within Smart City? Do we have our maturity to be able to completely implement an IoT Smart City solution from scratch? Or do we need partners in our fifth bullet to be able to help us with this? And this should, of course, be mapped towards the solution complexity. So doing a mapping with the organizational maturity on one end and the solution complexity on the other can really help to focus what development model should we use. Do we need to employ or benefit from all of these partnerships, or is it something which is relatively simple that we can implement ourselves? And then the seventh recommendation is start small, think big. So it is very easy to become lost in policies and governance models and data management models, etc. But a lot of the time, if you spend all of the focus on that, then you will not get the small benefits of some of the simple solutions that are out there. But it's important that when we implement those simple solutions, we need to consider recommendation 1 to 6 when doing so, because then it can be reused in other applications in the future. That was basically the gist of the Danish guideline to sustainable and digital transformation.
Thank you, Anders, for this, in fact, pretty comprehensive overview. So it will be available later this month in both Danish and English. So we're very grateful, I think also we should say that here, for the work we have been able to take in as baseline from the standardizations organizations, but also from other initiatives. So Lotta, from the other side of the strait between Denmark and Sweden, how can you tell us a little bit how you have worked with Klassa and some of these same kind of issues, but from a different angle?
Thank you, Martin. Yes, I'm Lotta Nordström, and I'm the CIO of the Swedish SALAR organization for municipalities and regions. I think that my presentation is going to focus on the first of your recommendations, focus on the data. Because I'm going to tell you a little bit about a tool that we have created that is called Klassa. Klassa is an information security classification tool which has been developed by the SALAR organization in cooperation with member experts. The tool has been available supporting system owners for almost 10 years now. What we aim to do with the next version 4.0 is to broaden the scope by making it even more usable for anyone who is taking part in managing information in a municipality or region, not just including the experts, as a way to further what we call information security maturity. A little over a year ago, we measured the level of maturity within the municipalities in terms of how structured and systematic their work with information security was, based on the standard ISO 27000. We then found that on a scale from 1 to 4, the average was 1.2. And that was when the decision was made to redevelop CLASA so that it could be the center of supporting a risk-based, systematic information security work that includes the entire organization from top to bottom. When CLASA 4.0 is released in March this year, it will now be information-centric instead of system-centric as it was before. This makes the tool usable for all information classification, regardless of how the information is gathered or processed. From now on, the system will be developed in modules to make it easier to add new functionality. In this first release, we add a module to define, manage, and solve risks concerning both information and organization. To support the systematic process, we are also adding views for the organization's Chief Information Security Officer, the CISO, to supervise how the information owners are dealing with information security issues, and also to gather information to report back to the CEO on information security risks and solutions. The requirements catalog, which are the base of CLASA, are updated with the latest acts of law that has an impact on information management, and all requirements rewritten to support understanding whether you are an expert or not. By the mid-year, it will also be possible for larger organizations to download the tool and install it on-prem to manage the information security risk in itself, to gather too much information on security risks in one place. During the last couple of years, a lot of governmental authorities in Sweden has become aware of CLASA and are now interested in the possibility to use the tool. We see this as a great opportunity to make life easier for the municipalities and the regions, as they often produce or consume information which is owned by the government. If CLASA can be the means to even out the differences in the way we handle information within the public sector as a whole, I, for one, would be really, really proud.
Thank you very much, Lotta. I think this is a brilliant example. So you say there's actually standards there, and you can use them to assess maturity and so on. But then the guidance, the translation of this in principle to the municipal practice.
Yes.
You need tools, you need guys. Yeah. So it's really about closing that super relevant gap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Precisely.
So it's very easy to see, and also so how complementary the Danish approach and the Swedish CLASA work is. But of course, the next reflection would be, okay, how do we then link these? Because there's progression. So perhaps, Pieter, we can go to you, because in a way it's not fair that you come last, because I mean the Flemish authorities have been working very long with this aspect as well, and I think we have all been gleaning to your kennishoop, your knowledge exchange side and so on. So please, could you share some reflections on your path working with this?
Thanks, Martin. Well, I'm very happy to do so. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having us. And I'm also very happy to hear that our efforts over the last years have actually been seen throughout Europe and throughout the sector. So My name is Pieter Lenaerts. I am IT director at the Agency for Home Affairs in the Flemish government. We work together, Home Affairs, we work together with cities and municipalities in Flanders, but we work around smart cities as well with plenty of other parts of the Flemish government. And we try to have we try to have a real quadruple helix approach to developing Flanders as a smart region. And our latest effort there is the VLOCA, the Flemish Open City Architecture Project, which we do together with our technology and academic partners, VITO and IMEC, and together with corporations and cities and municipalities in Flanders. And the goal of VLOCA is to translate open reference frameworks and architectures for smart cities into practical and evolving smart city guides. So our goal is to take the knowledge and the bodies of knowledge and the reference guides which we see developing everywhere and make them accessible, make them comprehensible, cross-reference them so that individual cities and municipalities in Flanders can actively use them. And we do so starting from the content. We start with co-creative tracks, which are thematic or content driven. We have currently 3 co-creative tracks which we are running. The first is Water in the City, where we bring together the cities which have projects in the domain. We bring together parts of the industry who are active in the smart city domain for water in the city. We bring parts of the Flemish governments which are working around the environment and pollution into the game, and we bring them to a co-creative platform. We bring people together to discuss issues which they find and to bring knowledge together on the platform which you so kindly already mentioned, Martin, our Knowledge Hub. A second track that we're running, we're just starting that up right now, is about hop-in points. Now, nobody knows what hop-in points are because it's a very Flemish thing, but they are multimodal transport service points, and that should ring a bell. And then a third track is more of a technological nature, is a smart city data broker, where we see that each city needs to aggregate data, to assemble and aggregate data from all of its sensor networks and make that usable across its applications, but make that usable in a sound and durable and controlled manner. So we are having a co-creative track about a smart city data broker as well. How do we do that? We do that in co-creation throughout the quadruple helix. We want to create a common technical vision on the digital architecture of cities and communities on these subjects. We are bringing together principles and standards and scripts to boost competitive and innovative applications and to make components and parts of these applications to work together across their vertical silos. We do this in a co-creative way and on a central knowledge sharing Wikipedia knowledge platform. We give access to European and international standards to cities and municipalities who very often do not have the capacity to monitor all of these international initiatives. And that way we join forces together in a rich ecosystem of standardization tracks and partnerships. The Knowledge Hub, which you mentioned, is actually a Wikipedia platform where we've used an extra module to make it semantic. So when we use concepts in our descriptive texts, these are semantically annotated. There's only one way to find out how that works, and that's by going to the URLs that you see in front of you right now. Switch on Google Translate, and the encrypted Flemish language will be translated to English for you. And then you can see what this semantic wiki actually means and why it's so interesting for the public. So that's very briefly my introduction into what we are doing. And Martin, the word back to you invite everyone to visit our resources on those URLs.
Thank you. Thank you, Pieter. So you say it's the introduction. Well, it's also the closing because we're coming to the top of the hour. So maybe you can unshare the screen. Thank you, just so we can see all three of you here with us. So it's clear that very concrete things are happening. The question is then, where are we 1 year from now? Can you, Pieter, can you, fantastic, can you unshare? So very, very quickly, just 30 seconds from each of you, Anas, Lotta and Pieter. So what do we want to achieve in 1 year? Okay, so now we have very concrete guides and guidance out. Anas, in 1 year, Lotta in 1 year, Pieter in 1 year.
Yeah, I would like in 1 year. So we have launched our Flemish Open City Architecture initiative. In 1 year, I would very much like that to be self-sufficient, to have investments from different parts of the Flemish government and from cities themselves into these co-creative tracks. Right now, they are centrally funded. We want those to be, the funding should be distributed, and cities themselves and Flemish entities themselves should be investing in these tracks. Good and concrete. Lotta.
I would like that in 1 year we have synchronized the way we are defining the security levels of data and information, regardless of where the data and information are coming from, and also raised the maturity levels of knowledge and structural work with information in the municipalities and regions. And can we reach the governmental authorities as well? That would be really great.
Sounds good. Anas?
I would like to see that the percentage of the IoT solutions that we see, those who have started small, are actually building on the guideline recommendations to have the interoperability, to have the possibility to share the data through APIs, and that they are also engaging in the ecosystem to form these new partnerships with other small solutions, so they create small additional values, because from that they will build bottom up and then create a new society.
Fantastic. So I invite you back in 1 year and we take stock. And of course, if you're in Europe, do engage in the livingin.eu. If you're a municipality, I mean, of course, engage with the OASC community, be a member, be a partner, and so on. If you're in Japan, team up with the stuff that's going there. There's so many things all over the world. Thank you to Anas, Lotta, and Pieter for your time and for your vision and for sharing the work from you and the colleagues. It's very good to see this is coming together, city by city, country by country, and so forth. Back to you, Davor.